Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so pleased to be joined by my friend and colleague, Melissa Whiteford St. Clair, who is a Marine Corps veteran spouse. I never know whether it's like a veteran Marine Corps spouse, and just solopreneur. Hi, Melissa. How are you?
Hi, I am well, thank you.
I'm excited to be chatting with you today. And, I don't want to assume that everyone knows all about you because we've been together for so long with NMSN, but like maybe we should start with having you introduce yourself and a little bit about your business.
Sure. So I have been an entrepreneur, a solopreneur since 2006. So before that hashtag work at home became a thing during COVID, I was already doing that and so grateful and can't wait to talk a little bit more about that.
No, that's awesome because that actually is a great segue to my first question for you. I mean, you started your business before the option of entrepreneurship was even a glimmer in most military spouses' eyes. I mean, like, how did you get started? It's always hardest for the person first out of the gate. How did you get started? Where did you find the resources to support your journey?
So I was newly working at the local chamber with my sights on one day becoming the director. But early on there, I just got so inspired by all the other small business owners, the entrepreneurs I was interacting with. And lo and behold, discovered the virtual assistant industry. Um, and I thought, I think I can combine my executive admin and management skills and this new available technology, and let's try it. So I did not even make my 3 month probation at the chamber, but they gained a member as a new small business owner.
No,
So that was kind of a quick change. But Semper Gumby, right? Always
that's
flexible as a military spouse.
So you're like a failed worker. You just had to be working. Love it because I think I'm the same way. But I mean, like, with the benefit of hindsight, since you were actually working at the chamber and you were providing a lot of resources for the local community, not just military spouses, and then, like with your work with NMSN, you've kind of been in the first front row, right? For seeing like the evolution of how far we've come when it comes to support for military spouses. So I think I'm going to ask you like a more specific niche question than I ask everybody else. How far do you think we've come when it comes to resources for military spouse entrepreneurs?
Oh, wow. So I think when it comes to resources for military spouse entrepreneurs, I would categorize it in abundance, an abundanza of
Yeah.
resources. From organizations like NMSN to continuing ed courses available through LinkedIn and colleges. Um, and just the small business administration and all of its local centers that you have access to in towns that military bases are located.
And I think there's more of a recognition among like chambers and also like SBA centers about military spouse entrepreneurs. I mean, I think before it was like, okay, let's go look for generic resources for entrepreneurs. But now it seems like people actually recognize that military spouse entrepreneurs may have different challenges. So I think I mean, in my observation, I think that's been kind of cool.
Yes, and when I started my business, there weren't any specific training programs, but now there are. So it's just even better access to exploring and launching a business if that's what you elect to do. But if you don't want to be the small business owner, there are agencies out there that are looking to hire military spouses exclusively as part of their virtual assistant teams.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I know that you alluded to people having resources out there specific to military spouse VAs, but I know that you have a resource out there that's on your website. And maybe later on you can share the link in the comment section. But would you mind sharing like maybe 3 tips for people who want to start off as a VA, who are maybe considering being a VA, and maybe a tip or two for people who are already VAs themselves about how to find clients? Would you mind sharing some tips?
Oh, I'd be happy to. I love talking about VA startup and VA, growth. So I would say analyze your skill set. and also make sure that it makes sense for your family. Because as a military spouse, we have other obligations that, typical civilian families don't have. So make sure that the time and the timing is right for you and your family. I know we all want to contribute and survive and thrive professionally alongside of our service members. So just think about all those family dynamics as you think about working. And then segueing to that, whether you opt to be the small business owner or if you choose to seek out becoming a team member of an agency that hires military spouses to perform virtual assistant services. And along with that, making sure that you are accessing all of the resources that are available to you locally and online. And don't hesitate to reach out to someone that's already in the industry, because they tend to love talking about what they do. And they will know how to help you plug in and potentially even make referrals if you're not already networking in person or networking online. It's a good connection to have somebody else in the industry.
And she means it, because I've sent you so many military spouses who've been interested in becoming VAs, and you're always very willing to talk to them. How do people reach out to you, Melissa? Is it through LinkedIn? Is that the best way?
LinkedIn is the best way. Yes, absolutely. Very active there. So yes,
And
let's
what is
link
your
in.
handle? Melissa White. Is it Melissa Whiteford St. Clair, or is it just Melissa St. Clair?
I think it's the whole thing. But I think the URL is short, Melissa St. Clair. So
Okay, cool.
you'll see
So go
me.
find her on LinkedIn. Go connect with her there. So now that we've talked about your business, I want to talk about your passion, because we often tell people that they need a hobby, and then your hobby's kind of turned into another side gig. And I have a feeling that's probably going to overtake your main gig one day. But tell us a little bit about your poetry and your justice work. I mean, is this something that has always been simmering under the surface? First of all, tell people what you do. And then tell us if this is something that's always been simmering under the surface.
Okay, thank you for asking. So, along the way, I had a strong call to social justice. And so I began studying history and founded a platform, White Girl Advocacy. And that kind of confounds some people. They're like, white girl advocacy? Well, it's pretty simple. I'm a white girl and I'm an advocate. So that gets that right out of the way early on. So I needed a space for the poetry that I was writing. And that was also something new. And then a space to share what I was learning and what I was unlearning. And, as I'm examining my own biases along my journey. So that godsend gift of poetry is a processing mechanism for expression and transformation. And I am now sharing that poetry. We always are paying it forward, right? As military spouses, sharing the aspect of poetry as a processing mechanism for just arts and advocacy as a way to study and learn and bring in that creativity.
Love it. And how's it going? Because I see that you're on stage. So how's it going? Like, how do you get out of your shell and just start one day going on stage and sharing your poetry? I have to think that for creative types, that's got to be the most nerve-wracking part, is like when you give birth to something and then you have to be open to criticism, right?
Oh, yes. So, I'm a behind the scenes person, a virtual assistant, works behind the curtain. And, military spouses, we are typically, quiet, but I am so proud of today's military spouses who are advocating and using their voice to get their needs met for their family. But a lot of prayer and encouragement from, my network to do something with it and then do something more with it. So I have been able to share the poetry platform most recently at a large community event that was focused on unity and justice. So sharing the process of poetry, making it easy to use that. You can just level up your journaling and kind of play with poetry.
I think that's awesome, Melissa. And I think I really wanted to interview you because it's so funny because when we put out this call for like military spouse highlights, our team members were so reticent. They're like, they don't want to hear from me. I'm like, they do want to hear from you. And the reason I wanted you guys to hear from Melissa is because it's not always easy. I remember giving this advice to younger spouses and also my own son, because he's like, well, like my job's great, it pays the bills, I get paid well, but it's not necessarily what I'm passionate about. And I'm like, well, that's why they call it a job. Like, you're not going to find, and if you're not passionate about your job, maybe seek ways to, like honor your passions or, maybe in a hobby or a side gig. And so you kind of exemplify that, which I think is great. Because I guess my last question to you is going to be like, what? And I promised her I wouldn't ask her last question, but here I am asking her last question. Um, like what should people do if they have like this burning passion and they have something that I'm like, I like my job is fulfilling, but there's this other part of me that really wants to explore this. How do they get started?
Oh my goodness. So I did reach into my own, toolbox to launch this passion project because it was a calling and I feel like, a sense of purpose. So using my VA skills to set up the whole platform for white girl advocacy, it's all the same things of marketing and communications and how are you going to operate. But if you don't want to do that on your own, find another charity or social cause that aligns with your heart and mind.
No, that makes total sense. And it resonates with me because I started NMSN as a passion project. And here we are still 15 years later. But that's the way it
Yes.
goes. No, but thank you, Melissa, for sharing your story with us. And remember, if you have questions about being a VA or poetry, reach out to Melissa on LinkedIn. At this point, I think I'm going to end the interview here and then we're going to continue the conversation behind the scenes. But thank you so much to our friends at USAA for making these conversations possible. And we hope to see you back here next week. Bye, guys.